Good afternoon. How are we doing today? Day one of CES. Woo. That wasn't good enough. Okay, good afternoon. How are we doing today? Good. Yay, thank you so much. I'm Elizabeth Parks. I'm the president and CMO of Parks Associates, and I am so excited to welcome you all to Parks Associates' 20th anniversary for hosting Connection Summit at CES. We have had a great partnership with CTA for 40 years, actually. This year, Parks Associates is celebrating its 40th year in business. And Trisha Parks, our founder, goes way back with Gary Shapiro, and that was really the start of the relationship. And I understand from reading LinkedIn that this is also Gary's 40th year in his position. So we are very proud partners, and we want to send a big thank you to CTA for continuing to invite us back to talk about the smart home. And today is, I think, probably one of my most favorite conversations we have, although I love all the areas we cover at Parks in our research. But the security space is near and dear to our heart, and we've been studying this for our entire career in business. And now we're seeing the blurring of lines together, changing customer relationships with monitored security. We're looking at the introduction of devices in the home that are threatening traditional monitored security systems. And we are seeing the advancements of AI and sensor-based technologies, which is absolutely changing the game in the smart home and security markets. So I have a very esteemed group here that we're going to be talking to and getting their perspective. But first, I want to share just a little bit of Parks Associates research. And as a reminder, our primary business is market research and consulting. We produce over 100 syndicated studies across 8 different markets that we cover, focused on the consumer, small business, multifamily, and we have had many requests to move into the commercial security markets, and so you will see us moving into reporting on what's happening in commercial security as part of our growth plans at Parks Associates. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, we're currently showing 48% of households in the United States having some kind of security solution, with that vast majority, 34% coming from security systems, 14% coming from a security device that we are counting as either a networked camera or a doorbell or a floodlight with a camera. And the floodlight with a camera was just introduced into the market, and so now we're counting it there as well. We're also tracking paid security services. So you can see across the United States market, which has 126 million internet households, 35% are paying for some kind of paid security. And you can see that delineation between services attached to a device versus attached to a system. We also know the past few years that monitored security is absolutely at a crossroads, but with incredible opportunity, particularly as we look at these major players transforming themselves into something much more than just a traditional monitored security provider. This is very important because when consumers are looking at who they're buying their security solutions from and where they're buying them from, there's new competition in the market, and I love these 2 charts that's showing a couple years of different data, 22 through 2025, and showing where consumers are buying their security systems, and then how are they purchasing them, with that online channel being incredibly important. And so these are the things that we're going to be talking about today, and I'm very excited to have our panelists introduce themselves and then lead this conversation. So thank you so much for being here, and we're going to start off with Gene introducing himself. So Gene, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks Elizabeth. Hi everybody, Gene LaNois. I'm Vice President of Product Marketing for Vivint. Outside of the product marketing, I also work on channel expansion, so really happy to be here.
Great, and we also have Hugh Owen, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Hugh. I run marketing for Alarm.com. I'm pretty new to Alarm.com in the industry. I've been there about 8 months, so I'm pretty sure I'm getting hazed.
Well, you're working for an awesome company, and we're very happy to have you on stage. Thanks for joining us. We also have Kevin. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Hey, everybody. Good to be here. I run product management for Johnson Controls, and Johnson Controls is a very big company. But inside Johnson Controls, we have what we call the intrusion division, and that makes up kind of 6 premier brands that most people know and love in this space. That's Qualsys, DSC, SureGuard, Bentel, Visonic, C24. So, we are very dedicated on this space. I was excited to be able to speak on this panel today. Because this is kind of all we do, is focus on the security space. So happy to be here.
Great, powerhouse player in the room. We also have Matthew Wootton. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead and share more about your role in Ivani.
Yep, so I'm Matt Woodton, co-founder and CTO at Ivani. So at Ivani, we do RF sensing tech that we call Sensify. It's able to turn existing IoT devices into sensors as a firmware update based on the disturbance that humans and other things cause to communications. And so always happy to be on a panel and talk about the space. I'm sort of super techie, and so love kind of smart home and just telling it like it is.
Awesome. So we've got a very good diverse panel here to share where you see the security market going. And I want to start off talking about the customer relationship and the value of integration across ecosystems. So Jean, I'm going to start with you and see if you can comment a little bit more about security plus energy plus automation and sensing, and maybe share a little bit about Vivint, particularly the role that you see integrating security and energy together for the consumer at home.
Yeah, people may not know, or maybe they do. Vivint is owned by NRG, electricity reseller and actually generation company. And so we're a smart home company inside the utility energy business, both gas and electric. And at the end of the day, there's everybody has experienced probably an increase in their electricity or their utility bill across 2025. I know I did. We've got, almost 60% of those people facing an increase in energy costs at the same time. We know from our We Home survey that 54% of people expect smart devices to help them lower their energy bill. And so in order to do that, you have to be able to talk to a lot of things inside the home and identify whether or not people are home and routines, and whether that's falling to technology that's observing somebody moving around in the home, or knowing that you've left and creating automatic setbacks, et cetera. All of that really falls into this opportunity of utilizing smart home and energy together. Having the communication across devices is something that, it doesn't matter, Kevin's not gonna wanna make every device in the home. We're not gonna wanna make every device in the home. There's amazing manufacturers that make other specific devices, and figuring out how to make sure that companies like Vivint, others, et cetera, have those integrations to enable communication. The homeowner expects communication. They just expect one thing to be able to talk to another. And you try to match up, how do you balance the business side of these integrations to the customer expectation? The expectation is everything should work together. It's not necessarily reality today, but I think, evolution-wise, you continue to see this maturation of how the companies are gonna enable this. So smart is gonna be the key to energy savings, but it will take communication across companies and devices.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been moving towards this world of convergence for a long time with bringing it together for the consumer. And a lot of this is also leaning into the different technologies that are helping understand what's going on in that environment. And so Matt, I want to see if I can come over to you and share a little bit more about how Ivani is helping with bringing these different ecosystems in the home together, and the power of technology behind the hardware.
Yeah, so speaking about like Ivani and kind of what we've done, so one of the sort of partnerships that's been made public is that we've been working with Philips Hue on their sort of motion aware platform. So that was a software deployed sensing solution to their existing ecosystem. So the idea of these sort of IoT devices that have been in the market that are either controllable or just talk over networks, the fact that they can become sensors and become inputs, which are very useful for things like utilities or security monitoring, being able to light those up at a scale in a reliable fashion is super important. And so our kind of focus has been generating systems that delight users and enable all of the sort of manufacturing players to exist in those ecosystems. So from a security standpoint, you can start to look at, are smart lights part of a security system? I would make the argument that they are now. Switches, outlets, but then you also have places for panels and specific sensors, and it's going to take those all coming together and being integrated well to, kind of fuel the generation of what's coming next. Having professional install is super useful right now, and it'll be interesting to see how, AI, I'll just throw that out for the first time on this panel, I'm sure it'll keep coming, how they can make use of all that underlying data, but in order for it to be useful, it has to first be reliable. And so that reliability is a real underpinning.
Yeah, lots of really, really good points there, and bringing up a main point of the blurred lines between the smart home market and the security market, and what does that mean for all of us who are delivering those products to the consumer or businesses, and then what does that mean for the consumer experience? And a lot of this also gets back to the installation side and how security systems get installed, how consumers are choosing on how to have them installed in their homes. And so I want to touch on the role of professional installation versus the DIY play, and why Pro Install really does end up helping strengthen the customer relationship. And so Hugh, I want to come and pull on some of the Alarm.com position as a leader in the security space, and this customer relationship and the things that you are doing, particularly when we talk about Pro Install and then the blurred lines when we think of security systems plus devices attached to them.
Right. So I think, there's obviously a lot of immediate answers that sort of prop up when you think of having a professional do something versus trying to do it yourself. But I think the most important one that stands out to me is sort of the first impressions and the first experiences. Like anything, if you, as an end user, be it for a small business or a residence, if your first experiences with that system, with that hardware, are very, very positive, it leads you to use that much more, to rely on it much more, to have positive experience with it, to push through any hard edges, and you're then more likely to have these sort of positive affirmation cycles that lead you to want to add to it, want to use it more, want to rely on it more. And it's the same of, I think it's January, right? Everyone's thinking about being slightly healthier. You've got all the people that choose to go and do it yourself via an app on your phone, or those who go ahead and get a personal trainer. The personal trainer maybe is, there may be more cost associated with that, but in terms of outcomes, the people who choose a personal trainer are going to be fitter and healthier and continue doing that much more longer, right? And so I think where a professional installer is going to result in people who leverage that investment more for a much longer period of time, add to it, and get the outcomes they want.
And ultimately what you're talking about is value, right? All that value that the customer is experiencing, and then the layers of value that can come along with Pro Install, a good experience, and then potentially adding more and more devices attached to a system, more convenience, more value, more happiness, more delight, right? Yep. This is a transformation of security into lifestyle services. And it's a major point in the market right now that we have with devices attaching to systems and then standalone systems, standalone devices on their own, and that installation play. So really good points there. I would love to get your view, Kevin, on the dealer market and Pro Install and what JCI views value, particularly when we think about consumers and their security solutions.
Yeah, sure. Look, I think I may be a bit biased. For those who don't know, I actually started my career on the installation side of the business as an installer, in the attics, in the crawl spaces with the rats, pulling phone lines. So, I very much understand that world and get that world. And then, a little bit later in my career, when we started Qualsys in 2010, look, we were a Silicon Valley startup. We easily could have decided to build an app, launch a product, put it on Kickstarter, try to stick it on a shelf, go to retail, some other channel, but we didn't do that. We very specifically chose to go to the pro security channel market, the dealer market. And that was very purposeful. And I've always said that security is sold, not bought. I still very firmly believe that. Most people don't wake up one day and decide to buy a security. And instead, we're partnered with 15,000 different dealers here in North America, that their entire business every single day is to go out and drum up new business and sell security to consumers and add their value on top of what they do. And so I'm a big believer in the pro channel, and especially in the pro installation channel. I just think they are by far the best positioned to drive the market forward, to continue to drive their own businesses, and to offer the best experience to the homeowner. They're experts on what they do. They spend hours inside the home. They spend a lot of time upselling devices to customers, and some of the best partners that we have, we see that their installers are actually very good upsellers. Not only does that make their business better, but it makes the customer's home better and the customer experience better, where they're getting more than what we used to call a 3-1-1 system, right? They're not getting 3 doors and a motion. They're actually getting much more robust, interconnected systems today. And that's largely driven by pro installs and installers themselves adding value throughout that process.
And also by the platform behind these different pieces of hardware or sensors across the home. And so that platform is really a major driver for what's coming in the future, and that's already here now. And so I want to touch on really why is this platform behind all of this so much more valuable than somebody just going out and buying one networked camera? And does that mean that consumers will look at their security systems in a much different way than a standalone device, like, let's say like a Ring doorbell or a standalone networked camera? And I'll come back to you for this, and then Gene, I'll come over to you.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, we're so far beyond just a doorbell. And while Ring certainly has a place, and I think they've done some amazing things when you look at their history and where they've been, starting with the doorbell camera. We offer much more robust systems today that address a lot more use cases. A door sensor is not necessarily just a door sensor for security anymore. It doesn't necessarily have to just detect an alarm happening and call the police, right? It can actually interact with my home the other 23 and a half hours a day that it's not acting like an alarm sensor. It can work with the camera, it can work with the lighting, it can work with the door window sensor. And so having more pieces in the home for interoperability and more of a platform approach that's professionally monitored, professionally managed, and supervised and serviced by our pro installers, I think is just a big differentiator. It's not really the same thing.
Yeah, so really two different types of value that's being delivered. And so Gene, I want to come over to you and see if you can give your perspective of this platform view, particularly as we think about the different services that are being offered now or that might be coming in the near future.
Okay, so I'm going to make one quick comment on the professional installer side.
Sure.
Prior to Vivint, I got to see both DIY and pro installer through the Google Nest lens, and whenever there was a professional contractor capable of communicating, being that consultant for the homeowner, you always saw higher sales, you always saw full, provisioned and lit up and integrated product. So it becomes very efficient for whoever that, partnership may sit through. So there's a clear difference between a DIY customer looking at this one specific thing and they're going to do it themselves versus somebody then enabling a consumer to recognize everything else that they are now capable of bringing together. So I just wanted to come around on that. On the platform side, I think this is only going to become a bigger deal as time goes on, because there was not expectations. I feel like I'm a little repetitive around expectations of a consumer, but it's literally the scenario of the business. Years ago, consumers would be like, I got this doorbell, I got this connected light, I have this camera, and they thought that was cool, that was smart home. And then as they had it, they started to realize what an albatross that becomes to bounce around from one app to another, to have one product that doesn't talk to the other. And suddenly they realize the inefficiency of the cool smart home that they had. And then because they've learned that didn't mean anything in the beginning, they just wanted these solutions. Then as they started to realize what those problems are, that's where we are in the evolution of a consumer right now, is they want things that will work together. So now buying decisions are being made off of what they may have foundationally of their main platform in their home, whatever they consider that to be. Could be, any one of our brands. It could be some of the, an Amazon or a Google or Apple, whoever. But now they want to start to search for how do they stay within their lane of a platform and get all these other features and functions that they may believe that they want to have in their home and in their life. And that's a combination of not only the geeky smart home security stuff, but it also rolls into all of the lifestyle products. So TV will obviously continue to play a role there, audio, etc. That just has an expectation of consumer that should work together. That's where platforms are going to continue to play a role bigger and bigger, because we have more educated customers than what we used to have originally as smart home really started to hit the masses.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see consumers expecting a lot more, and also with the mention of the TV, the largest screen in the home. I mean, there is a big convergence of entertainment and smart home, with security feeds coming into the television, and that television point being a main interface of communication. So we're going to continue to see this convergence across the whole home experience, not just in with security and the smart home space. But Hugh, I want to come over to you because you're representing Alarm.com, who is also one of the major leading platforms in security. And so tell us, your view on the power of the platform and where Alarm.com is taking all this.
Okay.
I know I'm throwing you hard questions.
No, it's good. No, it's okay. So the power of the platform, I think, ultimately comes down to simplicity. So simplicity for the end user. You just want it to work. You want it like one app rather than 17 apps, one experience. Simplicity for the installers. You want to be able to focus on setting up the system and not working through connecting disparate technologies. But the value of the platform is interesting, as I bring the perspective as a marketeer. I think the value of the platform was also very, very interesting, increasingly because of the buyer. And as millennials become a bigger buyer of homes, home systems, they have grown up in a world of platforms. They have grown up in a world where they're exposed to the Apple ecosystem or the Android ecosystem. The Gen X didn't. And so now there's an expectation from the biggest buyer that is causing growth in the market that, where's my platform? Right? And so I think we have to recognize that as well, that they're not, in the same way that they're not doing DIY, they want someone to do it for them. They're looking to buy, where's my home platform? And so I think that's going to be a big driver for growth in the industry as well.
Yeah, and I think those younger demographics are really interesting to dig into and understand how they view purchasing products and services and ownership and all that, because it is very different than some other generations and how we've grown up. So good points there. I want to talk more about the cameras and the thermostats in the home and how these are really changing the opportunity for security providers. And so, Kevin, let me come over to you and see if you can comment about the value there with detection, with verification, with emergency response, with proactive intervention, and also, I think it's notable that we've been sitting, smart thermostat adoption is at 17% in all US households, and it's been there for like at least 5 years, according to our data, that we continually check to see why isn't this moving, but it's not. And a bigger problem in the home with thermostats is people buy them, but then they don't connect them, which is another really big point for the pro install play, right? Because the value of the thermostat is in it being connected, and that value is also there for the utility who might be that partner behind the thermostat. And so that's also a very big point, is are these devices actually getting connected? So Kevin, go ahead, please.
Yeah, sure. So I'll tackle the camera piece specifically to start. I think it's clear that cameras are kind of the new super sensor, as I would call them. And they're going to be a very important part of the smart home going forward. I mean, they already are. Everybody wants a camera now, whether they have a security system or not. Some of your data, I think, showed that, right? That there's a portion of the market that just has cameras. They don't even necessarily have a security system. But they're becoming a really integral part of the home, and they're becoming very important in the ecosystem. And it's a lot different than the way we used to think about a camera in terms of, oh, I had a break-in, my alarm system let me know, now I went back hours later and looked at the footage, right? So as a very reactive approach. I think everybody nowadays understands that that's really no longer the use of a camera, and that they're becoming proactive security sensors, kind of fully integrated into the security system. In fact, we've done a lot of work with Alarm.com, who's a good partner of ours. We go to market together, and the Alarm.com cameras really are our camera solution. And where we've actually integrated these at a software layer. They're disparate hardware devices. They technically don't talk to each other inside the home. But we've actually been able to do cloud work and software work so that when the camera detects through AI or other algorithms, a person, an animal, a truck, things like that, it can actually announce that on the panel as if it was a local sensor talking directly to the panel. Right? So we see a lot of integration between video and traditional security systems. From a Qualys' perspective, we launched in 2010, 2011, which was a long time ago at this point, and we embedded a panel camera on the product from day one. We were the only ones to ever do that. So I think that we definitely believe in cameras as a sensor. There's a lot more to come. There's some really interesting things going on with remote video monitoring right now. And in fact, cameras are adopting security language. So, not that long ago, we would never say arm my cameras or disarm my cameras. But in fact, there are methods for that today. I can arm my video and have it do something different when it's in an armed status, and I can disarm my video cameras. And they can be monitored by a UL-listed central station, just like a security panel, just like a door sensor. So I think cameras are super interesting right now, and will continue to be more than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, let me see if we can get your comments on the technologies that can go in the cameras or on the sensors, and how that's really changing the game when we think about security solutions.
Yeah, so I guess speaking of like cameras as a super sensor, right? Like you can do all kinds of really cool stuff with video analytics, process what's going on in them. But I think speaking personally, right? I don't like cameras in my house. I want cameras all around my house, but inside, I just want something that knows something is happening, and I want to act based on that. And so when we look at what you can do with existing devices with firmware updates, you can do an awful lot from a security and convenience sort of use case perspective with what you already have, provided you add this intelligence layer on top. And so, now when I come home, right, I've turned off all my video alerts because they just go crazy. I look at them sort of after the fact, or there's a bit of proactiveness to them as well. But I just like opening the door, lights turn on, house greets me, says, welcome home, changes the thermostat. And right now, I had to build a lot of that myself as sort of a self-proclaimed nerd, right? That's easy enough for me to do. But I recognize that bringing all those integrations together at the moment is sort of the domain of the pro installer, right? But giving people a taste of what can be done is something that I think is a really interesting prospect as a firmware update. So the idea of an existing thermostat that either had a sensor or didn't have a sensor but was connected, being able to say now, okay, you're home, I'm gonna do this thing based on the detection between the thermostat and the router is really cool. That gives people a taste and gets them interested in doing more. And that interest in doing more only happens if it's a system that works and works reliably. And one of the concerns that has existed for a while with smart home, I think, is the sort of overpromise, underdeliver. Like, oh yeah, you know, there's been commercials for ages where you open the door, a house greets you, it does all this stuff. No one talks about how long that took to integrate, how hard that was to build, or that it required a professional. We're getting to a stage where that has to be the expectation, but that relies on the underlying sensing technology delivering on its promise. So like when we work with a company, right, we have to show, you know, okay, false positive rates that are very low for security. So we tested to like 1 false positive in 2 years. But you also want like a nice experience when you walk in. So you can run a separate algorithm for convenience that, you know, triggers within 400 milliseconds. But by being smart about your software and your integrations, you can do a lot more that gives consumers the confidence to trust what you're doing.
And all of this that you're talking about is also a lot about the data that comes behind the sensor, and then that ability to integrate and have things understand different sets of data together. And so, Jean, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about all of this data that comes in the background when we think about Vivint solutions and how that convergence adds all this new value when you have these different data sets.
Yeah, so, geez, that was a tough question, Elizabeth. When you're getting all that information, it just enables you to start to gather it and sort of parse it out. So, you know, we're talking about video just a second ago and how that falls in. Video, generationally, security for somebody my age is much different than security for somebody that is just buying a house for the first time. They think of security as a camera first, just to say it. But now you have cameras that are going to provide, I'm going to say it, AI data, and it's going to tell you, you know, whether or not something was delivered, whether or not, you know, landscapers were there, did somebody on a red bike ride across the driveway. So now you're getting this information that's going to be fed to you, and you're going to start to decide, what do you want to know? And so I think that's, and those, whether or not you're then going to, how are you going to feed that into a thermostat? Maybe it's running on program and you want to know if somebody sets a temperature above or it's changed from the schedule or whatever it may be. And then of course it rolls into occupancy of, you know, who's home. And now it's not even, you know, is there somebody there? All these sensors and the connected and the communication between them is telling you exactly who is there. It was done because of, they know because of facial recognition, or they know because of the ID of the telephone, and or you know that that telephone has never been in that house before. So that's really, I think, the big change is you're going to have all these inputs, you're going to have all the information. You can overload people with all that information, figuring out how to gather it up, have AI create a level of information that is valuable versus your doorbell rang, somebody's there's a car in the driveway, like really starting to needle it out and give more story information versus factoids that are coming across. And then one other piece is, everybody was talking about platform. I think the platform piece, super quick, I think the next layer of platform that we'll see is that there's an acknowledgement of like, hey, these are real platforms. There's plenty of companies that have made awesome products, but they're not truly platform. And you'll start to see, I think, partnerships where third-party products will actually provision right through the platform. You won't have to download that manufacturer app and then integrate it over there. I think that those will actually just really start to come together. That's where you'll see the next level of platform.
Yeah, those are great comments. And going back to your previous ones before the platform, it seemed to be all about context and understanding what is happening in that environment. And when we're talking about safety and security, particularly professional monitoring, we have the emergency responders on the other end. That's the whole point, right? The alarm goes off and they show up and they know what to do. And they know what to do because the security solution has all of this different information, and now there is a really big push when you look at ASAP to PSAP, when you look at the 911 call centers, when you look at verification requirements for the police to even show up.
Yeah.
They're not going to show up unless they know what are we showing up for and why.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole new push there, and those sensors and the cameras and all of this AI tech in the background gives more context.
Think about a emergency response, and the difference in the phone call is the sensor went off versus somebody saying, we can tell we have an unknown phone on the inside of the home and the alarm has gone off. That changes the disposition of that call.
And certainly if you know the mom's home, the dad's home, and the oldest son is not home, when you're thinking about who's on your call list, right? Because is this a false alarm? Who do I call? Are they in the house? Oh, I know it's mom. I'm going to call her first. She's going to say it's false alarm, and we're good.
Yep.
So there's just a lot of implications when we talk about the role of all of this AI-based technology in the background and the context. And this is about saving people's lives ultimately. That is why people pay for security, is to protect their things, their people in their homes, their most important things that they have, they're paying to protect. And so I want to end, it's amazing how quickly the time goes by, but we've got some short answer questions. So this is a little bit of a lightning round. So I'm going to ask a question. I would like each of you to answer quickly, briefly, with less than 5 words if you can, and give us your best views here. So first question, what is the best way to accelerate growth for security systems in this market? Best ways to accelerate growth.
I think you've got to sell convenience over complexity and
Okay,
capabilities.
convenience over complexity.
Daily wins
Okay,
for the user.
great. Engagement. Kevin?
I'm going to say be the best at what you do. I mean, we partner with a lot of companies. Some run very well, and some maybe not so much. So, you know, when we look at our strong partners, they are extremely good at what they do. They're focused and they crush it every day.
So don't necessarily try to be everything to everyone. Be
Yeah.
really good at that thing you do.
Yeah.
Okay, great answer. Matt?
Make it easy, deploy via software.
Ooh, good answer.
I'll say partnerships for meaningful integrations that are going to also go beyond just the security and smart home. It's got to roll into some lifestyle.
I think that's a great point, and I would just want to say partnerships. The smart home and security space does not really exist well without partnerships. I have a lot of people say, why would I want to come to your event? It's B2B. I sell to consumers. And I'm like, oh, you know, there's a huge reason you should come to our conferences, because the smart home is built off of many, many different ecosystems, and those partnerships is what is going to help advance your business solutions. Okay, next questions. Do cameras matter more than sensors in home security? And this could be yes or no answer. Do cameras matter more than sensors?
They're definitely, I mean, there's a significant upgrade to what you can capture with a camera, but the best systems are ones where you have multiple different data points coming in that can then, you know, be used to provide a smarter system.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with my earlier response. Cameras are sensors, and they should all work together.
Okay.
Data is king, reliability is everything.
Good one.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We're going to start with Eugene and come down this way. Hugh, you can answer at the end. Are false alarms a tech problem or a people problem?
I think today it's a little bit more of a tech problem. You can eliminate false alarms, but it takes investment in costs, and it's just, you know, a little bit of a scale. But it can totally be, anything can be overcome with tech, but I think it's more of a tech problem these days.
Okay.
I'd say yes.
Okay.
People can make mistakes, tech can make mistakes.
Okay. Kevin?
Yeah, I'm going to say technology problem caused by people. We can solve for it.
Okay.
I think there's nuance to it.
Okay, no answer there. Okay, Jean, we'll start with you. Will video verification become required and standard in security monitoring?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's cost savings that go behind it. There's efficiencies that are just very tangible. So that the answer, yes, video verification plus the addition of AI now that's able to diagnose and give more information on top of just, here's that clip, the ability to tell you all of it, it's too valuable.
Okay.
No, reliable data will be the measure.
Okay, reliability is the measure. Great. Kevin?
I'm gonna go with yes. We already see this in Europe. We sell 2 to 1. We sell a motion camera. In Europe, we sell 2 with every single panel. We sell 0 in the United States. I think the United States is behind.
Okay, interesting. Hugh?
Yeah, humans like visuals.
Okay, yes. Okay, great. I've got 3 more. We're going to go really quick here. Is AI helping increase or decrease consumer trust? And Hugh, we'll start with you and go down the line. Increase or decreasing trust?
I think what we will be able to build will result in increased trust. I don't know whether they would associate the word AI with that, but the features you will get, it's not about smarter alerts, it's less alerts, right? Okay. So yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with yes. I think people are generally trusting, actually, and we all slide past the 30-page EULA and click I accept and give all our stuff away for free because the benefit is greater than the potential harm, and we generally are on board with that. Yeah.
Okay. Matt?
I think both. You know, if it works, it improves trust, and if it doesn't deliver on what it says it's going to do, it erodes it very, very quickly.
Okay.
There's always going to be somebody who wears a tinfoil hat, but at the end of the day, I think AI is proving to have more pluses than minuses, and it's just an evolution of people accepting some of what it's got to prove itself a little bit, but once it does, you're there.
Okay, great. And here, this is our final question for you, gentlemen. Will insurance incentives start driving adoption of security solutions? Hugh?
I'll pass. I'm not informed enough to answer that
Okay.
question.
Insurance incentives driving security systems
I
adoption?
sure hope so. Yeah.
They should, but it'll take more time than it should.
Yes.
I would love to give like this real definitive answer. I would also rest with they should. Like there's been a lot of partnerships in the security industry with insurance companies, and I just don't think it's been executed fully yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's still coming. Okay, thank you all so much for that last Q&A, and thank you for joining me on stage. I love this conversation. If you would, please give a round of applause for our speakers. And thank you all so much for being here. We are very proud to have these companies sponsoring and supporting our events. If you're interested in getting involved, we would love to see you at our 30th annual Connections Conference that we're hosting in May in Santa Clara. I'd love to talk to you about that event. We really appreciate you being here, and at 2 o'clock we're going to be talking about interoperability, and so we hope you will join us at 2. Thank you so much.